we picked this topic because it is Black History Month, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing our part to honor and recognize some very important work that's been done in the Black community, but also to answer some of the latest challenging questions. There's been a lot of controversy lately over diversity inclusion and what it means and do we need it. So I'm excited that we're doing this. And by way of introducing this conversation tonight, I was listening to the radio not too long ago, and they had a show on Anna Murray Douglas, the wife of Frederick Douglass. And it was interesting to me for a lot of reasons, but they really portrayed how she was sort of the power behind the throne, right? So she was a self-employed woman of means. She actually helped Frederick get out of slavery while he was working on his speeches and books and newspaper. She kept the family finances, and she was an abolitionist in her own rights. She hid slaves. She housed abolitionists as guests in her home, but she risked the retaliation of slavers. And she was also vastly criticized and shunned and bullied by other women and marginalized in her role. She ends up surviving a house fire and a stroke, but little is known about her, and we don't see her or hear her from this historical perspective. So I thought she was interesting in that her story just felt like so many other whistleblower stories that I hear about the being marginalized and not seen and not being understood for the roles that they're playing, and to experience the bullying and the hazing and the marginalizing that we're still seeing today. So I wanted to sort of bring that point in time of history and then think about how we're opening up this conversation tonight with two very powerful guest speakers. I'm so excited. If you were at our conference last September, you already met Dr. Tony. I'm going to let Dr. Tony and Hershina Brown introduce themselves because they've got amazing stories, and I want to give them a chance to tell their own stories and speak their own truth to power. So, Dr. Tony, I'm going to start with you.
I always have to remember to unmute myself. Thank you so much for this invitation. Please excuse my dog barking in the background if you hear it. She's really needy today. Not sure what's going on. But it's always a privilege to be able to talk on this topic, especially when it comes to the impact on people of color, especially Black people, especially Black women. I have been a survivor, victim, whatever you want to call it, of workplace bullying, of dealing with retaliation, of whistleblowing retaliation, and racism and sexism and all the intersectionalities of it all. And it's, as a criminal justice expert, a forensic accountant, a consultant, I do pretty much everything I can learn, I try to do. It's one theme that comes across for me, and that's justice. And it's really not just about whether it's how it impacts, but it's an injustice in the workplace. A lot of times we spend more time in our workplace than we do with our family. You know, the only other time that compares to that might be the time we spend sleeping. So, you know, that needs to be a safe space. physically, emotionally, spiritually, and in all ways. And what we're finding now, especially for us as people of color, especially for us as Black women, is that work is not a safe space. You're not safe to speak out. You're not safe to be quiet. There are so many expectations. So I really look forward to this discussion tonight. Intersectionality is something that's really important to me. So thank you again for the opportunity.
All right, thank you for that introduction. Hershey, over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. And that was a wonderful introduction. I could not agree more with Dr. Tony, who is a close friend of mine as well. We have had conversations over the past couple of years about our experiences. So just to give more of an introduction of myself, I am Hershenia Brown. I have a master's degree as well as a graduate certificate in dispute resolution from Pepperdine University. I have spent the last few years really rallying and advocating for people who have been bullied in the workplace, particularly people of color, and as Dr. Tony mentioned before, particularly Black women. I serve on different committees with the International Ombuds Association as well as the American Bar Association, and I am happy to be part of this discussion. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone that's joining us today.
Paul, you want to say hi?
Yes.
I feel like everybody knows Paul Pearson.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Pearson. I'll keep it sort of brief. So let me pin myself. So as you may or may not know, I'm the vice president of Whistleblowers of America. I blew the whistle in 2019 on corporate espionage. I'm an accidental whistleblower. And then like a lot of whistleblowers, I knew nothing about whistleblowing, so everything was kind of like thrusted upon me at once. I had to like really learn fast about what is whistleblowing, because the only thing I knew about whistleblowing was, news about Edward Snowden. That's pretty much it, And then pretty much since then, I've really tried to help help when it comes to marketing and spreading awareness. I'm trying to use whatever skills and knowledge I know in the IT world to help amplify and connect people when it comes to whistleblowing. So that's a little bit about me and my story. I started a for-profit company afterwards. So I started my own IT company, and I also have a nonprofit that's also focused on education, to kind of help these other organizations like Whistleblowers of America and WBC, where I met Hershia and Tony at, actually, and a few other nonprofits that are also kind of focused on a lot of these issues. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, thank you. So now let's open up some of the discussion, because I want to get to some of the meat and potatoes here that I think is really what's at the core of what I want to discuss. So tell us about racism in the workplace. What is institutional racism, and how do you recognize it? What are microaggressions? How do you spot it? And how do you know what to do about it?
That's a lot. Each
I know.
one of those things is a course that I teach separately. Racism is, first of all, it's when just to be clear, it's when the group in power, which in this country is white individuals, when the group in power seeks to oppress and suppress and rule those that don't look like or reflect them. Race is not, it's not biological. It's a social construct. So that's why you have black and white. And one thing that we have to even look at the terms, and this is why it's important to the workplace to understand this, because when I teach a class called Race, Ethnicity, Crime, and Justice. And one of the first questions I ask students, when you hear the word white, what do you think of? When you hear the word black, what do you think of? the terms themselves create a good and bad, you know, better than type of scenario. So when you're in the workplace and a Black person is in the room, just the term alone denotes that this person is less than, this person should not be the leader here, this person should not have a voice, this person should lower their eyes when they speak. All of these different things create a negative dynamic for us. And it's something that's so ingrained that unfortunately, there are some that are racist that don't even know it. I've advocated with people that I had to explain, like, your advocacy is racist, that they just don't understand it or know it. But in the workplace, what I had to deal with was things like someone in a meeting putting their hand up, telling me to shut up. I didn't have a right to speak. I've had people tell me, you will never be my boss. I've had people tell me no Black B will ever be at this institution, you know, where it's blatant. It doesn't, you know, we can say microaggressions, we can say all these different terms, but it's blatant, it's overt racism, and it's a point of privilege. And, you know, I can go on, but I know it's other people.
I just want to add to that, and thank you, Tony, for that. When we're talking about bullying and racism, and also whistleblowing, we're talking about the effects of some poor behavior and abusive behavior in the workplace. People don't see, and we talked about this, Tony and myself, when we did a presentation for another organization. We talked about how you can equate bullying itself to abuse. And we also talked about how microaggressions really aren't micro, they are aggressions. When a person is being bullied in the workplace as a result of racism, there are a lot of issues that come into play and a lot of impacts down the line that people don't consider. When we're talking about behavior, degrading behavior, as Tony mentioned before of her experience, one of my experiences was my manager literally stood in front of my file cabinet and would not move, knowing that I had to get to my file cabinet to get information to answer her question. And she stood there like this with her arms folded. I've had people talk to me, managers talk to me in a condescending tone, to belittle me, to degrade my experience, to degrade my education, to make it seem like I'm the one that's incompetent. And weirdly enough, one of the experiences that I had because I do workplace mediations now, but before, when I was doing the workplace mediation for myself, I had to, when trying to calculate what they owed me, even from a salary perspective, payroll didn't even get the amount right. I had to go back in and show them what the deductions were because they were off by thousands of dollars. So, but I was being treated as if I was incompetent. There is a lot of for the person that has that type of behavior and that aggression, it's more so them being not just ignorant to certain things in terms of race and culture, but in addition, it's more so them being insecure about themselves, because a person that comes into particularly, let's talk about a Black woman, if she's coming into, she's working for an organization, she has a lot of skill sets already under her belt. She's probably already overqualified for the position. She's probably removed some items off of her resume so that she could be a good candidate for the position. But when she comes in, there is this expectation. I shouldn't say expectation for us in our community, it would be, we have to come in with an effort to prove ourselves. So we're already doing a lot to do that. And when you have someone that sees us as being beneath them, there's a lot of aggressive behavior that comes with that to show that we are not up to standards or up to par for our managers to be considered even for that particular role.
If I can add to that as well, and one thing is you kind of struck a chord with me when you said taking things off your resume. I mean, And I've taken so much off, and social media now and search engines make it really hard because they Google you and they still find all of the things you've done. But, and of course it's their insecure, their feeling of they're superior, but at the same time personally feeling inferior. But there's also that sense of, I need to tear you down and put you in your place. And I remember when I was younger and I was dealing with racism, even as a kid in various contexts, I said to my mother, they are just mad we learned how to read. Because it's like the more educated you become when it comes to the workplace, the more you're penalized for that very education. How dare you seek the American dream? How dare you play by our rules? How dare you reach the same level that I'm at or even above me? And guess what? Now I feel less about myself because I have to report to someone that 2 generations, 3 generations ago was a slave, and our families might have owned them. We can't talk about institutional or systemic racism without going back to slavery. And we can't talk about it unless we understand that a lot of those systems are still in place and exist in the workplace through various, and this is not every HR, this is not every company, we understand that, but these are the systems that are in place not to support people and women of color, but to be antagonistic, where we're constantly on trial for needing to prove ourselves. My education should prove itself enough. I shouldn't have somebody come to me and say, well, where'd you get your degree? Where'd you get yours? Oh, you don't have one. Oh, okay. These are the things that you get. And it's not because a degree is more important, but you're trying to debase my degree rather than understanding that I had to work harder for it than you did.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think we're at more people. So I think what you're honing in here is on the power struggle that happens in the workplace and how people see themselves and how they feel competitive. And that's where I think that we're seeing, and full disclosure, I live in Florida. So what we've got going on down here is been a little different. The power struggle and the goal to do away with or minimize diversity and inclusion programs, that has been startling in some ways. But given our political climate and the polarization of left and right, where do you see diversity and inclusion falling into that spectrum? Is its time over, or is it a victim?
Hershey, we've talked about this. You want to start with this, or should I hurt people's feelings?
I'll go ahead and start. And I know that we have talked about this before. You can fill in anything that I missed here. I don't think that it's so the way that I'm seeing it now, and the way that I've been seeing it over the past couple of years, it was a great idea. It was a great idea to implement diversity, equity, and inclusion offices across the board. The intent, though, what was the motive behind it? Because a lot of times it was more so, that's what we're seeing, it was a safe face to say that we do have a diverse culture, whether it's in the workplace or at an educational institution. But at the end of the day, the leadership was pretty much guiding the direction on where that would go. And over a certain period of time, you saw less and less people of color running those offices. So where the diversity lies, where the equity lies, is still up for question. Now, when we're seeing that these offices are being dismantled according to the Supreme Court ruling from July of last year. A lot of people now, it's not just, sorry, not people, but a lot of institutions now, not just educational, but also corporations are dismantling these. So they're trying to really go as the status quo based off of this ruling. They are concerned that there may be any issues if they keep a diversity, equity, inclusion office in place. Would they have to go through any legal litigation because of this? So they are concerned. So they're just getting rid of, would they have any support and sponsors? Like, how would that look for them moving forward? That is a concern altogether, because now one of the articles, I actually posted an article yesterday. I forget, I think this is in Alabama or Mississippi. One of the, I don't know if he's a mayor, I think it was a mayor, that says that he's now encouraging students, especially those that are athletes, to pursue HBCUs for their education. Why come to a university that does not respect you or celebrate you, or they're not going to cultivate you? So he's encouraging those students and their parents to seek HBCUs for their education. That is, it's concerning, because you're going to see that across the board, again, even in corporate America. There are going to be more whistleblowing conversations. There are going to be more, there's going to be more of a push to shut down reverse racism, because the more that there's a push to incorporate it or implement it, there's going to be a push to figure out what we can do to shut it down. Corporate companies are going to definitely see more lawsuits filed against them. So it's like you have deep pockets and you have insurance to satisfy these deep pockets, but you're also not looking at or considering what this is going to do for your brand across the board. Because now we're living in, we live in social media age. Everybody's sharing everything. Before, you used to have to be quiet. You're signing non-disclosure agreements. People are putting their information out there before they're signing anything. There's communication across the board. People are actively involved in networks where people are really encouraging other people or people within their network to seek other means or other opportunities or other options for their personal and professional growth. So this is going to be a conversation for a while. I don't, in terms of DEI offices, again, whatever the root of or the intent behind building them is one thing, but you're going to see some of the people that were in those offices that are not of color, they're going to be placed in other positions in the company, or they're going to get something fairly quickly in a different organization or a lateral move or something. People of color are pretty much going to be the ones out the door, and they're going to be the ones that's going to have to find employment. We're the ones that it takes us longer, and we have to go through the trauma of going through what we've already experienced in the workplace, now having to find something different. And if we've been in these offices for a while and now those offices are being let go, now we have to find a different role that we're going to be submitting our applications for. And we can talk about the mental health aspects that come across or a part of this, that associated with this imbalance that we're seeing now, this injustice that we're seeing as well. Tony knows that, and Paul even knows, I had long hair before. I don't have long hair anymore because as of February 1st, I cut it off because I have been experiencing so much stress as a result of racism, compounded from one experience in the workplace to another, and had one recently with whistleblowing. So now I'm having some issues with trying to really get my health on a certain level to where I'm not as stressed. I'm not letting people have power. But when you're talking about, again, compounded trauma, it takes a while to heal from all of this.
And I know your story, and we gonna fight this together. That's all I'm gonna say about that. One thing is DNI, the de-evolution of DEI is because it didn't have the right foundation, first of all. It was developed to appease us, to appease people of color. So let me put a person of color in an office so that when people of color have to complain, they can go to another person of color, and we only have one person coming to us rather than a group of people. Then other groups got involved, and diversity is more than just black or white or race or gender or what have you. So other groups got involved and it got watered down to, I was actually hired by a company to talk about racism, and they didn't even have a person of color who worked in their DEI department. So it got to the point, this is a forget multinational, this was a global corporation. So you have that foundation, and then once you have it where, okay, we need you to keep your people in line, it also gave us a sense of empowerment because, oh, we might actually be seen. We also have now more men and women and others in the community who have VP titles and executive titles because they're the head of DEI. That's inspiring. I could be a VP. I could be a president one day of a corporation. This is inspiring. So it ended up empowering us. So as you roll back affirmative action, as you roll back various civil rights laws, okay, what's the other thing we need to roll back so that we can begin to disempower the group of people that we've spent so many decades, years, centuries oppressing and suppressing? Oh, now we need to get rid of DEI. Because now they're getting empowered. There's resource groups, there's side conversations. They're starting to bring in speakers. Now they're asking for policy reform. They're asking for procedural reform within the corporation. There is too much that can be said. So let's roll that back. In essence, it's let's take away their voice. Let's make them seem like they're not different. We're not different. We're all the same. And in order for us to continue to make you feel like less, we have to let you know that there's no place for you to go. You're going to have to come to us. And this, again, goes back to the structure of racism, where a lot of times a Black person was put in a space in order to keep other Black slaves in control. It wasn't whites out on the plantation keeping us in control. It was other identified Blacks that were treated slightly better in order to keep us in control. And that's what DEI did. Now, was that how we saw it initially? No. We saw it as an increase, but that's what it became. And unfortunately, as we have a rollback of other things, whether you're talking the economic systems, the criminal justice system, workplace laws, what have you, this is part of it.
I'm going to jump in next before we get questions, because I had a hearing both Tony, you and Hershia experiences. My experiences were very, very different, but still racist intent, you know. But I think it's very interesting, both because I'm a male and I'm also bigger, like, so nobody's gonna be really aggressive towards me. But but when I have seen things that didn't make sense to me, I don't really, I feel like I don't have like I'm missing the social cues and sometimes like catch what's going on, you know. But the more work I do within this community, like for instance, BIC, I'm a part of a community called Blacks in Cyber, and it really is a congregation of people who have encountered racism in the IT industry. And a lot of times people have like the same stories, you know, but I feel like sometimes we're all kind of missing the point, but we have like the same stories, and sometimes it's all pointing towards the same agencies or specifically like 3-letter agencies or government agencies typically seem to be more I guess there's more racism, or there's more racist activities within these certain industries or different government industries. But from a numbers perspective, it's almost comically like biased or one-sided, you know. So like for instance, venture capitalism, because there's like a lot of money that goes into technology or venture capitalism. Um, a lot of I believe the numbers as of 2022 was like 99% of all of it goes to white males, and then 1% gets shared between women and minorities, you know. So it's pretty much like the idea that only white males have great tech ideas, like WeWork, you know. Um, and even what was it? I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with the Clover Group. I've been doing more and more research on the Clover Group, and they're like a construction company that they use some of their metrics. Some of their metrics they use is like not building around or not building for not building around black communities, and
Mhm.
it's illegal because they get money from HUD.
Yeah, we've
And
had a whistleblower about that actually.
yeah. So I've actually been following up with that more and more. And it's actually hilarious. After the lawsuit and everything came out, they actually added a DEI to their website, you know? And I'm looking at it right now and it's hysterical. Like, and you can, I mean, anybody in the IT industry can see that, they added that after the lawsuit happened. But it's just a gimmick at some point. It's almost like, oh, yeah, they can't be racist. They have DEI on here, But the videos and the audio that you hear coming from within the organization, comically racist. They refer to it's comically because they refer to black people as Canadians, so that in their conversations they say, "Oh, it's like little Canada over here." Um, but yeah, and I like to the way I kind of see like United States' racist problems, and I kind of compare it to South Africa, where South Africa is just overt with it. Where in the United States we just change the names. Like, but in South Africa they'll say, no, you can't live here. No, you can't buy land here. No, you can't get this contract because of color of your skin. They'll at least be upfront with you over there, according to Trevor Noah. But in the United States, they they use new languages, new terms, new issues, new faults, stuff like that. So from a black and white perspective, that's kind of how I really like see it.
No, I think you bring up a couple of interesting points. One, and I kind of threw Paul, and Paul usually likes the behind the scenes role. But I felt like we needed the black male perspective as well, because it occurred to me that that this was going to be a panel of women. So I wanted to see if there was a difference, if there was a dichotomy, that do men experience racism differently than women? And is there an age perspective here too? I was starting to think about that too. Do younger African Americans see the same trials and tribulations? Are they as aware? And I know I think there are some other folks who have logged in and joined. So in a minute, I'm going to open up the conversation because I want to let everybody join, and I'm hoping Sophia has her mic issue resolved, because I know you're sitting there with your wheels spinning. Sophia is an amazing whistleblower as well, who's just had a world of experiences. And I also wanted to make mention, just one more little thing. I don't know everybody who's joined, but I do know that even though we've been focusing on Black wall whistleblowing, I know there are other people of color who have their own issues. I mean, we've gotten, I think Jessica's on, Native American whistleblowers. I've talked to some Asian women who are whistleblowers, Asian men as well. So I think there are multiple layers of this problem that we can peel back, but I didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna start backwards. There's a real racism is racism, but there's an anti-blackness that we're talking about that's very different than the racism or ethnic issues that other groups face. And that's because of our history in this country. And I don't say that to minimize what anybody else goes through. We can all be victims from different levels, but anti-blackness is real specific and it's real direct. So I just want to bring that up, but you were speaking of the Black male perspective, Black female, when it comes to gender, when it comes to gender identity, when it comes to sexism, ageism, all of that stuff. Basically, I'm going to say what I say everywhere. Whatever you experience, you meaning the white community, we experience it more. So if you experience sexism, we're going to experience it as sexism plus racism, no matter what the context is. If you're going to experience ageism, then we are an older Black woman or a younger Black man. You're going to experience it. So whatever that intersectionality is on steroids, that's our life. And there is no anecdote for it. There is no magic pill. There is no policy right now that addresses it. And any protections that we did have are being rolled back. My plug for saying go vote and vote for the right people, but go vote. But it's there. So I just want to make sure that, you know, because this is, you know, Black History Month, that we're directly addressing that our experiences that we're discussing are related more so to the directness of anti-Blackness, not just to racism or otherism in general.
No, thank you for that. I think that was a understanding that difference is important. And I think that fine point that you just put on that gives me pause. But I'm gonna let others join the conversation. We've got, I think there's been some discussion in the chat. I'm gonna open back up the chat so I can see it as well. And I'm hoping people will join. And Sophia, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you. I'd love to hear your thoughts and some of your reactions as well. Oh, and we still can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Yay.
Yay. Thank you so much, Jackie. I appreciate that. As you know, well, you all don't know, but my name is Sophia Lewis, and I'm currently a whistleblower against American Express. It's actually still ongoing. I have my follow-up hearing this upcoming Monday, but this has been going on since 2018. And just like Christina and Dr. Tony stated, when you are in corporate America as a Black woman, you already have a lot of things going against you. You know, no one is protecting you. No one is looking out for your best interest. And then when things start to happen to you, you have to sit back and decide, do I speak up and lead with courage, or do I sit back and allow it to continue to happen? And that's where I found myself at American Express. And with my integrity, I will never compromise that for any person or any organization. And I decided to step up and lead with courage and speak about some of the fraudulent things that were going on within our sales department. And by doing so, hence being whistleblowing while Black, I was retaliated against, and ultimately I was terminated. There was an article written about me in Wall Street Journal. There were several articles both before and after my article about my department and their sales tactics that led to a major investigation by several different government agencies that is still ongoing. And all along the while, like I mentioned, was retaliated against. Everyone saying what you're saying is not true, you know, given poor ratings and ultimately suspended and then terminated. And all because I was leading with courage and speaking up about things that were going on that was hurting the company, which eventually, like I mentioned, has gotten the company where they are now as far as being investigated by several government agencies. But as a woman also who was in her 50s during this time, how do you start all over? You know, now I was in a role where I was a leader and had planned on retiring with American Express. And don't get me wrong, I still think the company is, as a whole, the company is good. It just had some bad apples. And I had planned on retiring. So when this happened to me and when I was terminated at the age of 50, now being a 50-year-old Black woman trying to go into corporate America, start all over again and still retire at the same age, it was impossible. So again, knowing these things now, I don't regret what I did because I still did the right thing by speaking up, but no one is protecting us as a Black woman. No one is looking out for our best interests. No one is listening to us. And so when these things happen, the first thing they say, oh, she's chronic complainer, or, it's that angry Black woman syndrome. If I hear that one more time, it's not. We want our voices to be heard and appreciated, just like our colleagues and our counterparts. We're not asking for more. We're also not asking for you to treat us any different. Treat me the same as you would treat my counterpart. And when you're not doing that, I have to speak up for myself. And by doing that, speaking up, it got me to where I am now. And unfortunately, I'm sure I'm not the only person that this has happened to previously. And I'm sure that it's going to happen, sadly, to others after me. And that's where we really need to start to think about this as women of color in the workplace, how we're able to speak up without fear of being, retaliated against and ultimately completely ruin your career.
Can I respond to that really quickly or add a comment to that? I want to first say I commend you for your bravery and your courage, because that is a long time to go through that process. And each time you are asked questions, whether you're going through discovery with an attorney, having to relive that experience all over again, is painful, and it's, again, adds to the trauma. Then you have ageism, wondering if you would be, if when you're applying for another position, would you even be considered for the role? Because even though you don't put the information, the years that you've gone to school or something on your resume, you still have to complete the online application. So they're getting that information from there. And then you have to answer the question, why did you leave your last employer? So those are all complicated parts of this scenario that add more trauma to the experience. But going back to what you said earlier, and this is what I was getting to, these companies, what they do at first is they offer you some flimsy, whatever type of settlement just to get you to go away, because in their mind, by you being a Black woman or a Black man or a minority, you don't have the money, you don't have the resources to get legal representation, to draw this out in court for the next 4 or 5 years, while they have their attorneys that are on hand. They have legal counsel specific for these occasions, as well as what I mentioned before, insurance to handle these situations. So they'll give you anything just to get you to go away, thinking that you're going to be satisfied with what they offer. When you are standing in your truth, and you want justice for your particular situation, you're going to be bold enough to go the extra mile. So if that means I have to drive a Lyft for right now, or Uber, or if I have to do something else to keep things going, because I'm going to pay for, if we don't get this settled or go through mediation and we're going to get what I want so that I can be made whole, we're going to continue. We're going to go through this route, and I'm going to save up money for the next however many, you got so many days if you're going to go through the EEOC or whatever your state law is for you to file a complaint. So you can save up your money and start finding attorneys, employment attorneys that will be able to represent you. Hopefully, some attorneys, depending on the situation, will say may wait until you get a right to sue from the EEOC, because that for them protects them, is like added insurance for you as a client, that they could be able to represent you. And even then they go through more digging or research of your situation, or you're going to be paying out of pocket whatever the legal fees are. But they almost bank on you saying, just go ahead and signing that non-disclosure agreement and taking that little 2 or 3 months worth of severance or settlement package that they're offering you. If you have the patience and the time and the forethought, and you just have the drive and the ambition to say, no, I'm not gonna accept these little pennies that you're giving me. I am worth more, and you are going to, as I said before, you're going to make me whole. Then I suggest anyone to go the distance, even if you have to go through litigation. And for some cases, it might be if you go through litigation, because a lot of times they will still want to settle in the meantime. If you haven't signed a non-disclosure agreement or anything of the likes, you have to be careful, but that doesn't mean that you can't share any information about this organization. Now, it might come back to hurt you, as Dr. Tony was saying before, if you apply for a position later on. and the human resources does some digging on you and see that you're speaking badly about the company that you work for. But also having that in the media is also a struggle as well. But when you have, if you have it to where you can tell your attorney, listen, do you have a legal assistant on hand or a junior associate that can take this for a legal fee and do the research on this, or file this brief in court and make sure that we are not continuing this case so much because you're racking up fees, but you're still wanting to make sure that you get every single penny that you feel you're owed. And you have to be creative. If you're going to mediation, be very creative with what you're asking for. I mean, 401k, you're asking for if they can still make sure that you have a pension, if you can make sure that they're covering everything, like everything you're going through, every single thing you're going through, not just when you're talking about your I have gone through this, being disparaged through this, and having like my mental wellness. You are keeping copies of when you went to the doctor. You are taking pictures of your scalp if you have had hair loss, if you are breaking out wherever you are on your face, because every time you take a picture, you are documenting the date to where that picture is taken. You are making sure you have everything that you need to where when you go to that mediation or you are going to court, you are asking this as confirmation for what you're asking in terms of your dollar amount, what you are asking to be made whole.
Thank you for that. And I think what you're alluding to is legacy wealth, and the fact that in a lot of Black families and communities, there isn't that legacy wealth that's going to allow you that luxury to fight one of these cases, knowing that there's this backup system, because it just doesn't exist in the same way.
And I had that same conversation with attorneys that I've had to deal with in my situations and in supporting others. And I remember saying two things. One, I said, look, I've been through worse. One thing they have to understand, while we don't have that legacy wealth, as you say, we do have a legacy of knowing how to deal with struggle. So you taking my job away, or me having to not go through having to struggle harder, is not new for me. It's not going to affect you expect me the same way it might affect you, because I've been here before. I remember I had a judge, a arbitrator once say, well, why would they hire you if they were racist? Let me count the ways. There's a lot of reasons, but when we have to go into it, and that's the conversation that we're asked by a person that's supposed to be impartial, how are we supposed to be empowered in our own process? The other thing, as a person of color, I don't care male or female, it's important to know your own value and worth. Because if you don't know what you're worth and what you're losing for that position, you're not going to ask for all the things that she described. Mm-hmm. You're not going to think about, well, into all of the bonuses or the increases I would have gotten, or the promotion that I would have gotten, or if I left on my own, or if I left there without stress, how quickly I would have found another job. All of these can be added to economic damages and losses. So mm-hmm. It's important that we push back that imposter syndrome and know our own worth, because that's where we can dig deep and advocate as we're going forward. And I know Kathy and Robert have been waiting for.
Yes. Thank you for that. If Kathy, if you're still here, and I will, because we started so late, like I'll let this go for like another 15 minutes so that we're not overly taxing everybody's time. But Kathy, go ahead. All right, Kathy, I don't know if you're having trouble with the mic. I can't hear you and I can't see you. But let's move on to Robert then, and maybe we'll come back to Kathy. Robert, I can see you. I can't hear you.
Okay, what about now?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, yeah. Thank you. So I just wanted to ask a kind of a light question, because I was so fascinated hearing these really interesting perspectives on what it was like to be a Black woman in these companies, and it implies, of course, that they're all relatively recent experiences. But just last night, Black History Month, I was watching Hidden Figures, and I don't know if any of you've seen that. And I just want to get your perspective on what's changed, if anything. I mean, for the experiences of those Black female mathematicians at NASA decades ago, and what, if you're familiar with the movie, any of you have spoken, you know, what's your perspective on, has there been progress, and what do you see as potential progress in the future?
Did you watch the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Super Bowl, yes.
Did you see the Pfizer commercial?
The which commercial?
Pfizer.
I don't recall the Pfizer
If
commercial.
you have an opportunity to watch it again, Pfizer went through the history of innovation in that field. I counted one. Now I'm happy if someone else can prove me wrong, but one Black woman. What we do fades into the background. What we do is seen as what we do. That's what we're supposed to do. And I was talking to, and it's not just Black women, I was talking to a Black male today who's having a lot of stress and struggle in the workplace. And he said, you know what, that word ad hoc at the end of a job description will be the death of me. And it's because everything we do a lot of times falls under ad hoc, where it's not spelled out in our job descriptions, and it isn't covered by we can say no, because then it just falls into ad hoc. So any innovative work we do, our thoughts, even how we might change a internal process to make it more efficient, it's seen as part of our job, where we don't get any or very little type of praise for it. And if we do, it's because it made our bosses look good. So they're praising us because we're on their team. So have things changed? Yes, we are definitely more in the forefront. We are more secure in what we say and how we grow. But has the systems that fortified what those women went through, are those systems still in place? Absolutely. And by hearing from people who have been in these fields for decades, in some ways it's gotten worse, because now it's not a fight against it like it was before. When you have things like you're hearing in Alabama and in Florida and North Carolina and other places, when you have some of these laws that are being rolled back, that means it's actually going to perpetuate what we're going through.
Yeah, to tack on to what Tony said, I feel like the progress kind of went in the other direction. Their playbook got more refined, but at the same time, their strategy is also more apparent. You know, that's the one thing that I've definitely seen. Like, the strategy is there. It's there almost in plain day. You know, but nobody really looks for it, or it's hidden in words very well.
Yeah, I think the hard part is when you try to prove these cases, people have learned not to say or put in writing, like you were saying about Canadians, like
Yeah, the Canadian factor.
Finding these euphemisms or ways around their racist comments. But it's still there. It's just, we talk, when I talk to whistleblowers, we talk a lot about opinions, facts, and evidence. And it's getting to that level of evidence that makes a case that can be extremely complicated. And probably a whole other discussion. I think, Kathy, I saw though that you're able to join. You had a question. No, we still can't hear you. Maybe put it in the chat. Let me open the chat so I see. And then I thought somebody else had a question. I thought there was a third hand raised.
Well, I did want to say something really quick while you're looking for the person whose hand was raised. Just to add to that really quickly, what we're seeing now, what we are experiencing for ourselves as Black women is that when we assert ourselves, the the ramifications are just, I can't, that's when the retaliation kind of sets in. We can't, we're told that we're pushing back, we're being difficult, as mentioned before, and all we're doing is just basically in a professional way stating why something can or cannot happen, or what our thoughts are on a certain situation, or what we think can be ways for us to improve on things. We are supposed to be seen and not heard. We are not supposed to provide any information that's going to make our managers look like they're not doing their job, or that they don't understand, or that they don't know, what we're trying to do is create an influence and support our department, for our department to look at, because our department has goals that shoot up to the leadership level. So all we're doing is our job, but whenever we are asserting ourselves, it comes off a certain way, and then again the retaliation and the corrective action behavior gets put into play.
And if we can add, I mean, we're in a position, you talk about the mental health impact, where we're scared to take a day off of work even when we're sick. We're scared to use our vacation time. Not because, and that's part of what we earned. That's part of what we worked for. But if we use our vacation time, guess what? Our white counterparts will go in and pick apart our work while we're gone. All of a sudden, a project will be given away. A promotion will occur while we were out. An important meeting will be had that, oh, you must have missed that meeting because you were out. Or when we come back, we're almost like, well, you would have been at this meeting. You would have done this if you weren't out. Like, we just missed work. No, we were taking a vacation. How dare you unplug while you're on vacation? So even in these situations, when you talk about microaggressions, and it's nothing micro about it. We are being attacked in the workplace. And if it was any other situation, we would call it, if you were living with somebody who treated you this way, we would call it domestic violence, period. We would call it financial abuse, emotional abuse, even spiritual abuse. We would call it a whole bunch of different things. But because we are a group of people, then it becomes, well, you just don't understand, or you're angry, you're fighting back, you're doing all of this. We're fighting to stay alive. We're not even fighting to take over. We're just fighting to have the minimum of what we need to survive. Then it becomes, how dare you? Don't come in our neighborhood. How dare you try to go after the same job we're going after? And then as whistleblowers, how dare you come to me and tell me I'm not doing my job properly? You should, like she said, you should be seen and not heard. You should still avert your eyes when we walk by. How do you even have the knowledge to tell us that you see something wrong? We didn't tell you to think that way. These are the types of attitudes and comments I hear and get on a daily basis from people, well, weekly, because some weeks it's not every day. I don't like people that much. But I hear all the time from people and this is male or female. So I know we as Black women are talking about the Black female experience, but I get this from men in the military. I get this from male police officers who don't even feel protected in their own job because they're Black men. So we have a lot of issues when it comes to dealing with race and whistleblowing and bullying and violence in the workplace when you talk about not being protected.
So how do we do better?
We have Kathy.
Oh, Kathy.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay.
Listen, this is very inspiring, and all I can add at the moment is I just came across this, all of you, and I appreciate everything you've said, Dr. Tony and everyone. But what I have to say is I just came across this amazing African-American woman, and I even sent her a message before this started. She is a coach and a psychiatrist, and she was on with Ari Melber tonight. This is not a commercial for her. And she was so inspiring. Her name is Dr. Cyrus, and I listened to her for like 45 minutes and I was blown away. So whatever that's worth, she sounds like a real contribution to anyone here. And I hope that's from my heart. But thank you for everything.
Thank you, Kathy. And we can certainly, if there's a link for that you want to put in the chat, or Paul is really good at finding all that stuff, we can share that. And I see Jessica. I know she said, Jessica Elm earlier said she wasn't able to get on her mic, but she just put in the chat that Iberia, not working, that Iberia is Title VII department complaints are separate from whistleblower complaint processes. And I also, I wish Tanya Ward Jordan was here. I'm sure some of you have seen her. C for C, change. Oh goodness, I forgot what the C for C stands for. Paul.
Coalition for Change.
Coalition for Change. Thank you. The fact that the EEOC, especially for federal employees, is so broken, so hard to get cases through. We should have thought about having her. So I'm just gonna, and Paul, if you can put maybe the C for C website in the link, we should give her a shout out, even though she's not here. She's done amazing work trying to highlight just how broken some of these systems are. But are there a final note, a word of hope? What could we do better? I always like to try to end on a little bit of positiveness. Is there any? I know you said to go vote. Maybe that's one of the answers for tonight.
I have something. This was imparted to me by Mrs. Anderson, who I got to know very well in Newark, New Jersey. Have a blessed day, Kathleen. Have a blessed day. And ever since I met her like 20 years ago, I say it like 4 times a day as an exercise to people. And, people in the African-American community just automatically know what I'm saying. And so I'm just putting that out there as a positive note.
All right. Well, thank you. So for the panelists, any final thoughts?
I'll say that yes, vote for the right people, whoever you feel the right people are, but the people who are trying to advance civil rights rather than roll it back. Another thing is to be different, be self-aware. A lot of times we experience racism from people who think they're allies and advocates. So be self-aware and ask questions. I've had friends who are white who like, you know what? This is my thinking about this. What do you think? A lot of us are happy to have that conversation with you as long as you're happy to receive the feedback that you're going to get. The other thing is, I'll say as a final thing is, don't be a bystander. If you see racism in the workplace, speak out like it's something happening to you. Just like if you would see someone getting physically abused or emotionally abused in the workplace and it gives you outrage, be outrageous about your outrage. Because you being a bystander is only perpetuating the racist elements within the workplace. So those are my 3 things to leave with you. Thank you again.
And to add to what has already been shared, my thoughts are even from a bystander perspective, being more active, even if it's externally. There are different groups that you can join that are part of the movement for this type of work. Hiring a consultant for those of you who are in leadership positions that make decisions. Hiring a consultant for your diverse workforce. As I said before, I do workplace mediations. I also am in the middle, as Dr. Tony knows, of writing my book on corporate America, the bullying as an epidemic, bullying in the workplace. There is a whole section that I will be speaking about hiring consultants from a conflict resolution standpoint, because you do have people that are in certain employee engagement units that don't know how, they don't have the skill set to deal with certain circumstances such as racism, such as discrimination. When you have those conversations at the beginning with maybe like an ombuds or a person who is a workplace mediator, that can come in and navigate those and help you navigate the process in terms of your options, what you can do, how to have that conversation with the person who you are having the conflict with, doing that role playing, the pros and cons, just giving you a wealth of knowledge so that you can be empowered and equipped to make your own decision about what you plan to do moving forward with that particular conflict. I'm also an outsourced ombuds. So I have those conversations all the time. Having that, when you're doing that and having that person and seeking that person as a resource at the beginning, when the conflict is ripe, when the situation is right before it gets worse, is very important, because you can pretty much help to resolve some issues at the beginning, or at least set a standard so that person knows not to do it moving forward. And again, having those options where if you want to move into a different position, do a lateral move, or even set yourself up to get you ready for moving out of that particular position, that particular company into a different company. What does that look like? What do you need to have on your resume? What are the questions that you need to ask? Being actively involved in this type of work to help advocate for it, and not just seeing other people do it. The more people that we have doing this work, of course, there's power in numbers. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. I thank everybody who hung in there with us. Again, my apologies for the link issue, but this will be on the YouTube channel. Paul is great about getting all of that done. So hopefully if anybody missed it or didn't hear all of it, it will be on our YouTube, and you can see and recap from the beginning. Where March 26th is our next roundtable, and we are queuing up a conversation about women in leadership roles, what that's like to go after government contracts and clients and big business, small business. So that will be on the 26th. And then in April, I think we're going to be talking about when the whistleblowing, when the wrongdoing is a crime, because we're going to recognize Crime Victims Awareness Week as well. So I know those are the two things that we have coming up. We've already announced September 12th and 13th for the next Workplace Promise Institute. Paul just put all of that information out on social media, and we are fine-tuning that agenda already. I can't believe we're already talking about how to get September done, but we are. So, and if anybody has any questions or comments, or you want to connect, make sure you're putting your information in the chat. If there's any follow-up, please send me a note, and we'll do our best to make sure everybody is connected up who wants to get connected up. So thank you all. What was it? Have a blessed night, and we will reconvene again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. That went well.